Okay, we're going to call this Rutherford Board of Education regular meeting to order. 7:30, January 25th. I'm going to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Here.
Mr. Bogosian?
Here.
Mr. Conti?
Here.
Mr. Healy? Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Here.
Dr. Olati?
Here.
You have a quorum.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. on the Comcast Public Access Channel and on FiOS Channel 38. A video of the meeting can be viewed on our website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of the meeting can make that request in writing to the Board Secretary. Okay, in the board packet, there were 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve. The reorganization meeting on January 4th, 2021 in the executive session. Does anyone have any comments about those minutes?
Yes, I do. In the section under personnel, there was a resignation, and it says Samantha Pashota. It should have been Sabrina Pashota. So we could correct the minutes to reflect that, please.
Mr. Kelly, noted?
Noted, yes.
All right, any other comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please enter those. All right, so we are going to begin this evening with the report of the student representative.
Hello, it's nice to see you folks again. Happy New Year and happy holidays. To begin with, winter sports are starting again, and for the past 2 weeks, especially winter track, which is what I'm doing, we've been doing online meetings about once a week, and then during those meetings, the coaches would give us a schedule so we can start practicing individually and start getting ready for the season, which starts in person on February 1st. Speaking of February, the February schedule is a lot more liked by students, especially since it's more similar to the 2020 schedule compared to the January schedule. And it gives the students more time to do work and have more time to just be with their family and just be with themselves and have like peaceful things to do and allow them to do their hobbies. So a lot of students like the February schedule for more better than what we did during January, and that's basically it.
All right, thank you.
I just want to comment on, and you could convey back to some of the students. I reached out to two of them via email. As we're going through this process of a year like we've never experienced before, and we certainly are working around the clock to try to provide the best opportunities we can for students and faculty and staff in a safe environment. We have not been afraid to reflect and revise when needed. And in the process of trying to look at changes, I met with a few students, read the comments of many students, and found them to be very insightful and very informative, and I enjoyed the conversation. And I will say that it was certainly a big factor in the discussion the administration had. So I want to thank the students and the ones who came forward as well for their willingness to meet with me. And I know it's difficult, right, as a high school senior, to send an email to the superintendent of schools and say, can I meet with you? That's not an easy thing to do. So I appreciate the honesty, and I also appreciate the dialogue, because it was very clear that the students weren't demanding or saying, hey, you better do this or else. They just wanted me to hear the point of view. And so I do appreciate that. And if you could share that with some of the students, I'd appreciate that.
Will do.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you what you thought of the new schedule, and appreciate you sharing that up front. And I do want to say in the same spirit, so having two high school students, my kids knew that there was potentially going to be some feedback, and I went to Mr. Hurley and I said, I heard about this potential feedback, and Mr. Hurley was actually excited about that, the opportunity to dialogue with students, to hear their feedback, and to say, okay, let's see what the students have to say. And I think that is a real testament to our district, the fact that there is an openness and those willing to listen and really hear. So I want to just acknowledge that and appreciate that, and also really appreciate what you're saying, and want you to keep the feedback coming, over the next few months, that you continue to be the student representative and let us know about your experiences and, the bright spots in any areas that, that you see, because your perspective is important. Are there any comments by board members? Ms. Jones?
Adding the extra time to the day is a really good factor too. They're going to get now out at 1 o'clock rather than the 12:15. Isn't that it?
Yes,
Yeah. So
compared to the
that's
schedule that
very-
ran to December, but the one that was running in January was going to be a full day, half in the building and half remote.
Right, but the one will be starting February 8th though, when you start going.
We'll add, right,
47 minutes?
we'll add about 42, 44 minutes to the day.
But that's as compared to September. I was
Right,
saying,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Yeah, Mr. Mazzone?
Just to, echo, I think, what the superintendent has said, that thank you for being here consistently throughout this. This has got to be almost surreal, as a high school senior, going about your day-to-day coming and going. I have a high schooler who's a sophomore, and I know, much like other members of the board, some of the challenges. But I want you to know we're all in this together with you, and we are just so grateful for your time.
So hearing no other comments, I want to thank you for your report, and you're welcome to stay, but we also understand if you have homework or things to study for as well, and want to wish you a good evening, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.
All right, so we're going to move on to the report of the superintendent.
All right, so just quickly, a few more points about the schedule for grades 4 to 12. I think the letter that went out from me, and then the subsequent letters that came out from each building, I think explained pretty clearly what the new schedule will be. I don't want to go through all that again. But I do want to just touch upon, the rationale as we looked at the increase in remote learners, the amount of remote time, again, without going through it all, in speaking with faculty and staff prior to the holiday break, I had set up a meeting with each building. I said anyone who wanted to come in and Zoom and meet with me could do so. And I probably had about 140 faculty and staff members take advantage of that opportunity. So I met with Washington School, Lincoln School, Pierpont School, and the Union and High School were in one combined meeting. So we did it over 4 days right before the break. And it wasn't just about the schedule, it was about anything. There was no agenda. They could talk about anything they wanted to talk about. And then in meeting with the administrators 3 or 4 times, and meeting with the steering committee 2 times for hours of meetings to take a look at, what's the best thing to do. And there is no best thing to do. Everything I had to answer a question of a teacher before I came to the meeting via email, and I said, every answer is an imperfect answer this year, because no matter what you do, there's, well, you're saying yes to this, but it's hurting you over here, that kind of thing. But we felt that this was really a good place to be right now in terms of the additional opportunity for learning compared to the schedule in December, managing the virtual time for the students, because keep in mind, it's not just the fully remote students. All the students in grade 4 to 12 spend about half of their time online, because they're in one day, and they're out one day, or they were in the morning and they were out in the afternoon with the new schedule. So it's not just the fully remote students, it's all the students who are going in. So, I think this was done, I think, hindsight's always 20/20, and maybe in October or in early November, this would have been the best choice to make then. But, we're going to live and learn as we go through this. Hopefully we'll never have to implement everything we learn again, because I hope we don't have another year like this. But we are, I do want to credit the administrator, we talked about the kids, but the administrators, the teachers, parents. Every time we make a change, people have to jump through a lot of hoops. And I know it's difficult. It's difficult for parents to be adjusting to different schedules, difficult for kids, difficult for teachers. The attendance office has to keep track of different levels of attendance. They have to get, we have to report fully remote attendance. We have to report hybrid attendance. We have to report, the attendance report that goes to the state every year is really a challenge. Days and days of work. It's been added with so many different layers this year. This has been a strain on everyone. So I appreciate what everyone is doing to try to make it work. We certainly are looking forward to hopefully getting more students back in the building. We're hoping that with vaccines coming and with changes in schedule, because the vitality is really missing from some of the buildings. There's no doubt about that. If you read this Sunday Times, you saw a rather disturbing article about the schools in Las Vegas who are frantically trying to get back and reopen because they've had suicide rates climb among their students. We're seeing, and our student assistant counselors are seeing that, not suicide, thankfully, but seeing anxiety and the like rising among our students. And, and to be honest, some of the students will say, well, I'm kind of depressed not being in school, but if I go to school, a lot of my friends are in there, and that's depressing too. So, we're fighting the good fight here. We're trying to get to the point where we can get people back in the building comfortably, safely. Our schools are safe. We'll stand behind, what we've done as a board, as an administration, and what the data shows in terms of the safety in the schools. But we still have to get through the layers and layers of pressure that people feel and work together on it. So I just want to let you know that we're working at it. I know you know that. We're all working at it, as you are. And we are constantly looking at what we're doing to make sure it's the best for the moment. I want to remind anybody who's has children in school, who might be either in Zoom or looking at this later, that if you want your child to come back in grades 4 to 12, we reopen that window through Wednesday into Thursday morning. I don't want anybody to be confused. We try to say over and over, if you already sent a form saying that he or she was coming back, do it again, because we didn't want to lose anybody in the, falling through the cracks. We felt that was very important. We didn't reopen it for K to 3, but we felt it was very important to reopen it in the 4 to 12 because a parent or a child may have made a decision based on the schedule they thought they were coming back to. It was important now to make it based on the schedule that you would be coming back to. I want to move on to a couple of things. I'm actually happy that I'm going to mention a few things that are not related to COVID. Probably the first time since last March I'll do that. But a couple of updates for you. We've opened registration for any new student, but primarily is preschool and kindergarten. Too early to talk about kindergarten, but preschool, our K-3 classes in both Lincoln and Washington are already full, and they opened up like early last week. The pre-K4 at Lincoln has 2 general ed spots left, and Washington is full. So, we do have waiting lists, and every year people do move off that list because things change. But again, I was pleased to see a really good early response that by students and parents and students wanting to get back to school. Our summer enrichment program used to be called Jumpstart. We switched to summer enrichment, had a great summer in 2019. We did not run it last year. We're going to run it this year. It will be run strictly on site. We're anticipating that the remote learning option may not be available come next school year. That would be, I think, the plan and certainly the hope as we go forward. And that would be a good sign on a number of fronts, right? Including the fact that we've turned the corner on the pandemic. But it's an optional program. We'll be running it as we've had in the past at Lincoln School. So information on that will be going out. We're also going to be running the extended school year program for our special ed students. That one we will offer if we need to virtually as well, because that's a mandated program in their IEP. Tomorrow in the high school, all the high school students will have a remote day because we're going to be giving the PSATs to the juniors. Several years ago, the board decided, well, the board approved the fact that we would pay for the PSATs and provide them to all juniors. And that was really a twofold reason. One was as a way to improve our students' opportunities on the SATs. Another was to give students the opportunity to qualify for national merit scholarships. But the third reason was it became an alternative to the graduation requirement for state testing. And for many students who may not do well on the state test, the PSAT provide a pathway to graduate. Well, of course, in a year where nothing is easy, that wasn't easy either. Normally, we'd use the cafeteria, the band room, the choir room as 3 big testing centers, and we'd run a full day of school. Well, we can't put all those students in one big testing center. We have to put students 8 or 10 or 12 max in a small classroom, which means we'd have to use almost every classroom, which means we can't bring the other kids in. So it'll be a full virtual asynchronous day for everybody other than juniors. We did tell all of the fully remote juniors and sent them a letter weeks ago that if they wanted to come in for the day and take the test, they were certainly welcome to come in, and I think the great majority, if not all of them, are doing that. So that will be tomorrow. Parent-teacher conferences in grades pre-K to 6 are this Thursday and Friday. So it's going to function pretty much like it always did, a half day on Thursday with conferences in the evening for parents, and then conferences on Friday. All of it being done via Zoom, and all of the sign-ups done through Google Form. And for the students, they will be either in for a 1-session day, either virtually or in person on Thursday, and they'll have no school on Friday like they would under the normal routine. I also want to mention briefly, we talked about this once before, the bridge year for juniors and seniors that is going to be in effect for this year's senior and junior class. This was a law that got pushed by Senator Sarlo. To be very honest and transparent, it was not supported by the State Association of Athletic Directors. It was not supported by the State Association of Superintendents. It was not supported by the State Association of Principals and Supervisors, but it passed. So we have the law. And what this law does is it gives a junior or senior the opportunity to come back for a 5th year of high school, essentially, so they can participate in spring sports. So this is how it works. okay? Students have to be notified of this by the end of this week, if they're a junior or senior. They have to declare that they want to do this by February 15th. By May 15th to June 1st, an individual learning plan has to be developed for the student. To qualify to do this, the student must meet all graduation requirements in his or her senior year. They will be able to walk at graduation with their class, but they will not get a diploma because they're officially going to still be Rutherford High School students, even though they've had to meet all graduation requirements. Now, I see some puzzled looks on your faces. I've had a puzzled look on my face for several months about this, okay? So I'm not going to be able to clarify this for any of you, okay? Then, next year, they must enroll for 12 or fewer credits per semester at either their local community college, and they will pay the tuition, but the tuition will be at a reduced rate because the community college has made a deal with the state on this, or they can take courses, elective courses, for the same number of credits in their high school or through online instruction through their high school, not a teacher online, but EduSeer or some online program. If they're going to play a spring sport, they must take fewer than 12 credits. Because if they take 12, then they're considered to be really a college student and they can't participate. They can only play a spring sport because of the spring season that was lost last year. They can take part in other co-curricular activities at any time throughout the year. They can't turn 20 in that year. They could be 19, but they can't turn 20. So we'll see what happens when we notify the students of this, and then we'll see how many students. You know, it's really postponing the true college experience or work or armed forces or vocational training by a year, even though they will get some credits if they choose to go to Bergen Community College. They have to abide by all the school policies in terms of conduct and the like, which might be hard to manage if they're not in the building and they're at Bergen Community. So that's the program. I just want you to be aware of that. There are some things, that people don't always think about, but for example, we talk about graduation rates every year, and sometimes we'll say, remember I will tell you, we only had one student of the senior class not graduate, yet our percentage is 94%. How can that be? And I explained to you that years ago they changed how the graduation rate was done to a 4-year cohort. And students who may have fallen by the wayside along the way, maybe in their sophomore year, non-credit, or their junior year they went for a GED, or whatever the case may be, count against you. It's not the number of kids who are seniors, it's the number of kids who began as freshmen and are part of the cohort. So if you had 5 students who decide they want to do this bridge year, and they have met all the requirements for graduation, but they're not graduating, they will count as non-graduates and work against your graduation rate. We also told their attendance will work against your attendance rate, even though I can't imagine how you take attendance if a student's going to Bergen Community College. I mean, I taught there for 9 semesters, and you take attendance in your class, we don't submit it to anybody. So there's a lot of things that weren't totally thought out about this. I mean, I think the intention was a good one. Give kids an opportunity to do something that they missed out on. But there's a lot of other things that I'll let it go at that before I get myself in trouble. Okay? And the last thing I have on my agenda, I'm happy to say that we do have a recommendation for approval for the final bid project, as we're, last one. And I remember the excitement when we said, wow, the first one, now it seems real, and now we're at the last one. And when we get to the section in the agenda where that's in for buildings and grounds, I'll have a little bit more to say, and maybe some of the members of the committee might as well at that time. Okay? Mr. Kelly, I want to give a few minutes to Mr. Kelly to talk a little bit about the budget process that we are embarking on this year. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I really just wanted to keep the board informed that the budget process is underway. We are significantly further behind than I'd like to be, but we will get caught up. And, we'll be ready for the presentations and for the submission in March. But we are working on some of the details right now, and then we work through the details and then build them up into departmental and categories of budgets. So it's underway. It'll get there, but it's just a little slow right now. There's a lot of other things going on. A lot of reports going to the state this month, so I'm trying to get through all those and get them out of the way and move forward. So.
Right, and we expect maybe in February February meeting will certainly have more to say. And it's just been an enormous amount of things that you just can't even anticipate. I can't even really quantify for you. Sometimes I go home and say I didn't have a minute all day, and I can't even think of what I did. It's just constant stuff that's coming out of the left field. So, for example, Mr. Kelly and I usually meet with all the administrative staff right after the new year to say, okay, let's take a look now at are there positions that we need to be adding, because that's the big ticket item, right? That and capital improvements in the budget. Are there positions we need to add? Are there any positions that we may not need, so we could take a look at, how it's going to impact the budget? Well, that means that we usually hold the first week of January. We're holding it Wednesday or Thursday this week. Okay, so we're going to get there, but it's just been a slower go. It's the nature of things. I remember my teaching days. One of my favorite plays to teach was Death of a Salesman, when Willie Loman kept saying the woods are burning, right? There's a fire around. Well, we've had to get the fire under control. So it's a little slower process, but we'll get you all up to speed. And I think by the end of February, as we push into March, we'll be in a good place with where we normally would be. We'll catch up and be where we normally should be by then. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hurley? All right, thank you, Mr. Hurley. So we're going to move on now to the report of the president. I wanted to start with a word of appreciation and support for the faculty and staff and administrators who are doing a phenomenal job through this time period. And I was going to also speak to appreciating the thoughtfulness around the evolution of the scheduling, but Mr. Hurley, you were pretty transparent and honest with your approach and rationale, so I want to thank you for that. So we continue to have three things on our mind, I think, as board members. One is what's happening around COVID in the school. Second is facility projects, and the third is all the other stuff, normal course of business. So some exciting things. First off, I believe we're going to have our inaugural boys lacrosse team.
Yep.
And I remember a year or two ago when we had close to 100 people at a board meeting, when it was obviously important to the community that be something that the school district consider. I think it's another example of the board and the superintendent working together to really listen to community members. So excited that that's going to be underway. We have two negotiations this year that are going to be coming up. Our Rutherford Supervisors Association and the Rutherford Administrators Association, and look forward to engaging in collaborative efforts to yield successful contracts. So I've asked Dr. Racine and Mr. Conti to join me as, on the Rutherford Supervisors Association group representing the board, and I've asked Mr. Mazzone, Mr. Sprayberry to join me on the Rutherford Administrators Association negotiation, and want to thank them in advance for their time and service. I also want to thank everyone. We've started to have our new board committee meetings for 2021, so thank you to everyone who's continuing in the committees you're doing, for those who are stretching themselves in other new committees for that cross-training that's really important. And I wanted to thank everyone for completing the board self-evaluation. Those, we will go over it in February in terms of doing an analysis of how the board evaluated itself. Did review preliminarily, and it was pretty positive. But I think there was also some really good areas of next steps that we could take as a board, so look forward to going over that with everyone as well. And finally, I just want to say, when I look around the room, once again, we are 9 for 9, and just really appreciative that this board is so engaged and involved and continues to show up and be present. It's not an easy time, so I just want to say I appreciate all of you and everything that you do for the board. Any questions for me before we move on? Ms. Ahmed? Say again?
Who is the lacrosse coach?
So I think when we get to
He's
approvals,
being approved tonight.
he's going to be approved tonight.
Yep.
He's a kindergarten teacher.
Resolution number 8.
And where do they track or play when they're children?
The Tryon Field.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, and at 8:01 PM, we are going to open the meeting to the public for any items related to the board agenda. So we have no one here in person due to the restrictions, so we're going to go to Zoom. If anyone wants to make a comment related to the board agenda, you can unmute yourselves now. Okay, hearing none, at 8:02 PM, we're going to close the meeting to the public, and we are going to move on now to new business where action will be taken, and we are going to start with personnel. Ask Ms. Lamed to please run us through it.
Thank you. Can you just clarify again that name that was a mistake on a name of this one?
That was in the minutes of last meeting.
Oh, okay. Tonight on the action of the board, we have, what's that? 12 motions to be able to accept or decline. The first one, Tina Rodriguez, Spanish teacher at the high school, we accept with regret her retirement. Anthony Posey as a long-term substitute guidance counselor, that's number 2. Number 3, Jessica Saraiva as a part-time teacher assistant at Washington School. Number 4, minimum wage, to approve an increase in the hourly wage to $12 per hour for the following positions in January: substitute teacher assistant, substitute bus assistant, and substitute lunch mom. 5 is the minimum wage for an increase in the hourly wage to $12 per hour for the following all staff members. And that there's quite a few of those as listed. 6, Joanne Bach, who's leave of absence under the family leave act. Joseph Joyce, who's moved again, family leave act, number 7. 8, Michael Foster, I mean, yes, is it Michael or Michelle? Michael.
Michael.
Foster as a lacrosse coach. 9, Shay Bender, disability leave with pay and following family leave act. 10, substitute teachers, include the substitute teachers for the 2021 school year. John Ford, Catherine Driscoll, Jane DeGilo, Engel Mache, Emily Cosmo, and Dana Ferrero. Substitute teachers for substitute teacher assistants for the 2021 school year, Jane Buckingo, Mache, Cosmo, and Ferrero. 12, travel reimbursements for Ms. Mulcahy, Emily Bregman, Lindsay Rosser, and Tammy Smith. So, with the board's approval, I'd like to put motions on the phone.
Okay, any comments or questions?
Couple of points of clarity, just a couple of omissions. On resolution number 4 for minimum wage, you should add substitute custodian to that list. And to clarify on the travel reimbursement, the that $316 fee is for all 4 people. It's because we're a member of the organization, there's a reduced rate. So it's not $316 per person, it's $316 for the 4 of them. Okay? And I also just want to comment, which I like to do when we have retirement, even though we'll be recognizing these people at the end of the year. Mr. Rodriguez, longtime fixture in our world language department here at the high school, and involved in many extracurricular activities with the students as well. And we wish her well, and she'll be missed.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Other comments? All right, I believe Mrs. Ahmed moved those. Do we have a second? All right, Mr. Sprayberry. Any last comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy, Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Olati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones.
Thank you. There has not been a committee meeting, and there are only 2 resolutions tonight under curriculum and instruction. 1 out of district placements for the school year, and 2 home instruction for just 2 students. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, Ms. Jones, you want to move this?
I move resolutions 1 and 2 under the curriculum and instruction.
All right, we have a second? All right, Mr. Bogosian, any last comments or questions? All right, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy, Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Olati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to finance. Dr. Racine.
Okay, finance, we had a meeting last Tuesday. Why you all up?
Sound so excited. Surprised.
It's been a while now, it's the beginning of the cycle. Yep. And as Mr. Kelly said, we talked about the start of the budget process. We also had discussions on our electronic transfer fund policy and the need for a new demographic study. Okay? And we did some preliminary review of our upcoming audit. So there's the motions now. We have 6 motions today. The first is the approval of bills. Number 2 is the December treasurer's report. Number 3 is the budget transfers. Number 4 is the ESSA application. Number 5 is to reappoint our attorney of record. Do you have to read all that, or? No. Okay. Just check sometimes the goal, yeah. Thank you, Bill. Okay. And number 6 is to reappoint Brown & Brown as a benefits advisor. What's the move on?
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions?
What is the benefit of advisors?
The benefit advisors, well, they represent us in discussions on rates for health and dental benefits, but they also serve as a resource for me and my office, but also all the employees too. When they have benefits questions, they can give them a call. They're very helpful. So, and as we've mentioned, there's big changes in health benefits, so there's a lot of questions. So.
Oh,
Other questions? All right, I think Dr. Racine moved those. Do we have a second? Mr. Healy? All right, any last questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Kelly?
Mrs. Ahmed,
yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy, Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Olati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to policy. Mr. Healy? Okay. Thank you. We are going to move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Sprayberry?
we have one motion, and that is the award of the Mortimer Wing project. And I learned at this meeting that there's a reason why everyone here has said that all the work gets done in committee meetings. There's a reason for that statement. And it was a great meeting. The participation was wonderful by all. You know, it was just a great discussion around so much of, you know, what is the biggest project we have, you know. And, you know, so that being said, we all have to take an oath not to talk about screens for at least 6 months. You know, but it was a great discussion, and, you know, just a really collaborative decision we came to with Alna, and looking at, you know, taking the screens, seeing them before we say no to them, look at them, you know, once they're installed, and see what they absolutely look like. And, you know, as we all discussed in the meeting, you know, you never know what you're going to get when you start opening these walls up and this building up and everything else. So we just thought it was the best all around way to go to, you know, with the right path, you know, to give us the most options, you know. So it was just it was a really good meeting. So I think it's the right thing to do for our schools, for the buildings, for everyone involved, and at the massive savings that it is, that is just unheard of. So kudos to everyone involved. So
You're going to move the motion, right?
So you gotta move the motion,
Oh.
and then you gotta read it.
Well, you don't have to read the whole
Or
thing.
just,
yes, I will move.
read
the
what's
mo-
in bold, I guess.
I will move the motion to approve the Mortimer Wing project. That award.
I think we're good.
If I may point out, I left this for everybody. This is the final one. There's several drafts out there. The language that's shaded here is the attorney's edition. I told you that might be something that could happen, but it's really just clarifying what was already there. But this is the one that you're voting on. There's no change from what has been communicated to you before.
Okay, so Mr. Sprayberry moved those, and questions, Ms. Ahmed?
Yes, I was looking for my phone today. I had to go by the school and take pictures because I had so many people saying, what are they going to do with the buildings coming outside? So I looked around, and the main comments that people have said they're really doing, they're so interested, they don't really care about those screens. You know, that doesn't bother them. They just would like it somehow to tie into the rest of the school. So I couldn't figure out what they're talking about. I never noticed myself, but, you know, we have the one wing that's brick with like a pink arch and the yellow windows, and then you have this one that's tan, and I don't know what color it is. And then you have, you know, different colors all over the place. And somehow we won't be able to tie those colors in. Like the bricks are all different, and all the different ways. And they figured we could almost done that.
The brick is not, the brick on the Mortimer Wing was never part of the plan to replace. It's going to get cleaned, it's going to get refurbished. We would have to demolish the entire building to re-brick it, or rip all the brick off. So the brick was never part of that. The brick is going to stay the way it is. It's going to be cleaned, it's going to be refurbished. You all saw 3 different occasions PowerPoint presentation that showed a not so good, a slightly better, and a much better picture of what the building was going to look like. So I would suggest that, you know, you go back, you look at that. We're also going to, we have a newsletter that's going to be coming out to the community in February, and we're going to put the 2 better pictures in the newsletter so people can see it. One that what it would look like if you had screens, and we're not even getting into the screens. We're going to, you know, just show pictures. No. What as Mr. Sprayberry explained, the screens on the locker room windows of the boys and girls locker room, those are the windows that face the back field, and the windows that face that are adjacent to the 4 doors on Mortimer Avenue that you use to enter to the gymnasium are going to have screens on them. That was part of the base bid, and that was for both security protecting the windows from balls in the back and the like, and also to give us the option of putting some signage there that might say, home of the Bulldogs or Rutherford High School or something like that when people enter the gym. Those are the same screens that would go on the rest of the building. The difference would be these are horizontal across while the others would be vertical. According to the plan for the construction, the screens on the locker room will be installed before we need to order and fabricate the other screens. So we'll be able to see them and say, they look pretty good, let's do it. They don't look so good, let's not do it. Or they look good, maybe we don't want to put them 8 places in the building, maybe we want to put them by the doors. It will give us the opportunity to see them. So to answer your question, you're approving the screens as an alternate in the bid, but we're not approving them to be manufactured and ordered because we're going to see the other ones first. So if we don't go with them, then the approximately $390,000 that the screens cost, well, that could be used in the project. That could be part of the, when we do change orders and the like. We could also look into aspects of renovation to the building that would fall under the language of the referendum and reallocate that money. Or the worst case scenario is money that doesn't get spent, and it's money then that could go back towards the paying off the bond. So it's a win-win. We're not making a decision blindly. We're making it based on seeing them. We have the money, and that money will not be put to bad use. It's going to go to one of those directions that I said. And to that point, we're also about $4 million or plus under budget on this. It came in at an extremely competitive cost, which again allows us to cover other expenses. It allows us for change orders. It allows us to see if there's other needs that are allowable, and it allows us to return money to offset the cost of paying back the bond if we don't spend the money. So again, we're in a very, very good place with this. Better than I thought we would be. I was concerned about this Mortimer project. I was concerned about Pierpont in terms of what the bids might come in at, and we'd be cutting it very close. We're in a good position, and I think that's something we should be pleased with.
I have nothing against screens, but what I wanted to ask is, in the write-up that it says screens right on the gym, are they talking about the screens I hope in back that where we within? Because those screens are falling off the building and what am I talking?
No, windows are gonna, I'm not sure what you're talking
Screens
about.
are like hanging and everything, even if you fix them, it would be better than not.
The portable building?
Huh?
The portable building?
Yeah.
The portable building's not part of the referendum.
No, it's the pool, the gym that's behind.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, those windows, no, those windows are getting all replaced. Every window on the Mortimer wing, this whole wing, with the exception of these windows, because they were new in the last renovation, they're getting replaced.
Other side of the gym.
Every window is being replaced.
Other questions? Mr. Bugasi?
So the original estimate on this project was roughly, what, 11 million, you said?
11.7, something like that.
11.7?
Yeah.
With the drastic reduction, does that also proportionally reduce the state aid towards this, or how does that work?
No, it doesn't, because the state aid is in the form of debt service aid, so we get a portion of our principal and interest commitments from this for the next 25 years. Now, if we end up giving some back to the public, if the board opts to, then that may impact, that may reduce the state aid proportionally, but that just follows. So,
Right, because obviously it reduces the debt as well.
yeah.
Right. No, we are in a very good spot. And we have, we certainly, we don't have to worry about, as Mr. Sprayberry said, you open up a 60-year-old wall, sometimes you're not sure what you're going to find. So we certainly are in a good position to cover things like that.
Mrs. Ahmed?
A few more things, a little things here. Those metal things, that's not what you're considering.
What metal
Yes, it
thing?
is.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't talking about that kind of stuff, the regular stuff.
No, no, we're talking about the metal screens that are, that we brought,
That's, between the portables.
right, the windows are getting replaced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the screen that you're talking about, also with the holes and everything, people were complaining that, or especially at the board meeting, if, we block too much light. The windows that are up there now haven't seen light in years. So anything you put up there, let the pool come up on the window, you probably still see more light.
Right.
So I just wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
That down, if they were gonna take away light from the window.
there'll be a minimal amount of blockage, but it's not going to be a significant amount.
But we got some windows that are pink and
Right.
tan and
Right.
they're filled in with,
Well, and it's one of the reasons why those windows have that film on there, which over the years is disintegrated, was because of the amount of sun that comes through on, particularly this side, in the morning. And the heat was unbearable. And keep in mind that, in this, up until probably in the late 80s, before we even had air conditioning window units in those classroom windows. So that was put up like a protection. So a little bit of blockage wouldn't be a bad thing. But again, I think the question around the screens, which Mr. Sprayberry, remember, we're taking that oath after tonight. We don't mention the word screen again for at least 5 months, right? Right?
6 months.
6 months, okay. But the thing about the screens primarily is an aesthetic thing. It's either going to enhance the look of the building or it's not. And, we'll see, because of a more functional screen over the other windows, we'll be able to firsthand say what we think. Now, look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? So we could have half the group that thinks, wow, it really makes the building look great, and the other half, that doesn't think so. So then we have to figure out how we're going to settle that discussion, right? And we'll settle it the way Mr. Sprayberry, I think, very accurately pointed out. We go to the appropriate committee. I state my feelings. Mr. Kelly states his. The committee states theirs, and we come up with a consensus. But I have a feeling that when we see them, we're either all going to say wow or not so well. I think it'll be clear once we see it.
just one more thing. I'm all for them, I don't,
Yeah.
I understand benefits, a little more modern, whatever, but would that have anything to do with security, not being able to cover the whole level within, bond level?
No, it would not. It
There
would.
would be a shade on the other side that they could pull down. I don't know how to.
No, it's a metal part of like a building that's attached to the building.
Yeah.
It's just like, right,
But
any,
even somebody looks in there and see it on the first floor,
well, they can see in it now.
they would usually pull shades down, right?
We'd be able to still have shades. It's on the outside of the building.
Yeah, but I'm saying there would be some way where.
The screen is on, the metal screen is on the outside of the building. So you could, any shade or curtain is not going to, right. Okay?
No more questions.
You sure?
Any other questions? All right, so I believe Mr. Sprayberry moved those. Do we have a second? Mr. Mazzone, any last comments? All right, hearing none, Mr. Kelly's going to take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy, Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Oladi.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Was that the final?
That's the final bid. We're
That
done.
was the final bid. All right, very exciting. I just want to give everyone here a round of applause.
First,
What? Almost, or you do? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Congratulations, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Hilly, and everyone else. All right, so we're going to move on to old business. Anyone have any old business they'd like to bring up? Mr. Healy?
They were very complimentary about the consent administration.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Any other old business? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to a legislative update from our legislative chair, Ms. Jones.
Yes, I have a couple of resolutions to report on. Just one thing that's been coming up on, when I go on the leaders' updates, is there a law that mandates a district to insist that the staff get a COVID vaccine? And there is no law in New Jersey that says that they must. Obviously, they'd be encouraged, but there is no law that they must. But that comes up often, so I just thought I would mention that. The school audit delay bill. This is Senate Bill 3043, Assembly Bill 4603. Provides 2 months extension to file annual audit. The deadline is January 31st, and the submission to the commissioner by February 5th, 2021. Normally that's in November, right? 5 months after June, so we have 2 months, on that one. Computer science bill, Senate Bill 990, would require each school district to annually issue a report to the New Jersey Commissioner of Education on the computer science courses offered in the district. That's ongoing in process. STEM opportunities for young women and minorities, Senate Bill 2854, will direct the New Jersey Department of Education to develop and administrate an outreach program to encourage young women and minorities to pursue post-secondary degrees and careers in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics or STEM field. New Jersey School Boards Association supports this bill, which has passed the full General Assembly. And energy efficiency stimulus bill, Senate Bill 3033, would, among other things, help schools upgrade their water and ventilation systems to better protect the health of students, educators, and workers. Through this bill, the school and small business energy efficiency stimulus program would provide resources ensuring heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in schools are upgraded to improve the health and safety of the environment and to allow safe operations during COVID-19 pandemic. This legislation also requires carbon dioxide monitors to be installed in every classroom. At New Jersey School Board's urging, the bill was amended to ensure that the cost for this mandate will be paid through the grant program. And upon release from the Senate Economic Growth Committee, the bill was seconded in reference to the Senate budget. So that's in process, but if they give us a grant, then that would be helpful. That's it for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any comments or questions about this?
No.
All right. At 8:29 p.m., we are going to open the meeting to the public for any agenda items related or not related to the agenda. So seeing as there's no one here in public, we'll go over to Zoom. If anyone has a comment they'd like to make, you may unmute yourself. Okay, hearing none, at 8:29 p.m., we are going to close the meeting to the public, and there is a need for an executive session.
Negotiations and quick legal update.
All right, negotiations update and a quick legal update. No action to be
No
taken?
action? Yeah.
Okay.
5 minutes?
About 10 minutes will be an executive session. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? Mr. Mazzone, second. Mr. Bogosian, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We are in executive session.